If you had to use one word to describe the Karen Read case, and I would take the word conspiracy off the table, what word do you think you would use to summarize the Karen Read case? I think that one of the words that has to come across your mind when you're doing this exercise is unprecedented. There's a lot of unprecedented things that happen in the Karen Read case. One of them is the fact that she continues to sit down with journalists and media outlets and to talk candidly with them about her version of events, her thoughts and feelings about what happened in this case, what is going on with this case. And it's very unprecedented, very out of the ordinary for a defendant who is charged with second-degree murder and is facing the possibility of life in prison to sit down with the media. Generally speaking, as attorneys, when you're representing a defendant who is charged with murder, you don't want them talking to anybody, let alone talking to journalists. And remember, all of those statements that she has given, all the statements that she said, are still admissible in trial. Now, some people will say that this is the biggest proof that she's innocent. Why in the world would she risk talking to journalists and media outlets if some of those words can be used or twisted or whatever you want in her trial to get a guilty verdict? It's not worth the risk. So it must be that she's innocent. On the other hand, some people will be saying, and will argue that no, she's really as guilty as sin, but she's doing this to taint the jury. She wants to get the world out there to feel bad for her, and therefore when they're called for jury duty, and maybe they're sitting on her case, that they'll feel bad for her. So no matter what way you do, you're always going to spin it in the way that you want to. Nevertheless, it's still unprecedented. The fact that she's sitting down with the media is very unprecedented. And before we jump into the video, which I'm going to show, this is the most recent interview that she did with Ted Daniels and Boston 25. And there was apparently a 2-day period of time that she sat down with Ted Daniels and gave interviews. And we only are going to see 6 minutes of the clip. So far, most likely we're going to be seeing more of that interview come out as the trial gets closer. But so far, all we saw were these 6 minutes. So I'm going to be giving you my thoughts and my reactions to some of the statements that Karen Read gave to Ted Daniels. Before we do, I also want to remind you that these statements that she is giving, even the ones that are off the record, the ones that are not aired for all of us to see, those have been ruled by Judge Cannone already previously when it came to Gretchen Voss, that those statements are discoverable and they have to be turned over to Hank Brennan. Now, thoughts and observations and impressions that Gretchen Voss may have made notes about, those are not discoverable. So maybe those notes from Ted Daniels, maybe she's not being truthful here, maybe she's being truthful there. His own thoughts and impressions, those are not going to be discoverable. But all the unedited statements, all the off-the-record conversations that she's had with Ted Daniels, that is going to be discoverable. And Hank Brennan already filed a motion on February 7th, knowing that this interview is going to air. He filed this motion that he's going to want the entire interview, everything that's unedited, the entire conversation, any statement that she gave to Ted Daniels, he is going to want. So we already see that that's going to happen. Well, let us go into the actual interview itself, and I'm going to give you some of my thoughts on some of her answers, because I think some of the things that she said were very interesting. So here we go. Let's get right to it.
We spent several hours with Karen Read over 2 days, with and without her attorneys. We asked for the interview and were somewhat surprised she said yes. Read tells me she withdrew to New Hampshire for 2 months.
Well, right away, some people are going to say, well, why is she sitting down with this Ted Daniels now? Why is she sitting down with Boston 25 all of a sudden before her trial, just a couple months before her trial? Obviously she's up to no good. Well, he just said himself, the reason why she sat down was because they actually asked for it. So they asked for it, and she said yes. So this does not seem to be that she's the one trying to manipulate the media and put out these statements so to affect the jury. This is Ted Daniels saying, look, I asked her and she agreed, so we're going to have this interview now.
After her first trial, she's been preparing for round 2 ever since.
I have nothing to hide. My life is in the balance, and it shouldn't be.
It is unusual for someone who's accused of murder.
And as he's saying, as we were just talking about in the opening, yeah, it is unprecedented. It's very unusual for someone who's being accused of murder to sit down. And her answer to that is, I have nothing to hide. I just have nothing to hide. There's no reason why I'm being charged, and I have nothing to hide. And I'm happy to take the stand and say that also, which she's going to talk about later. But that's her whole reason for sitting down with him, saying, look, I'm 100% innocent. I have nothing to hide.
To do this interview or others.
I've seen the more information the public has, the more they they understand what we already know.
Good to see you.
We first met Karen Reed at a hotel in the Seaport. She's logged 150 nights here since her legal fight began. It's the command center for her defense, and she is one of the commanders.
When we get new information.
And by the way, that is so important. When you have a client who can actually help you with the case, it's so incredibly valuable. A lot of times you have clients who don't know how to help. They don't know how to sift through information. They can't help you. And in fact, a lot of times they take away your focus from what's important because they think something's important, or they get involved with something that's really not important to the strategy of your case. So it's so valuable. And I've seen this and I've had this, but it's so valuable when you have a client who can actually help you do your job and can help you present their case. It's extremely, extremely valuable. And a lot of times that involvement of the client can really help you. So in this case, Karen Reed's an intelligent woman. She's an educated woman. And it's someone that definitely seems that she's right involved in the middle of it and that she can really help out the attorneys. And it's really, really valuable just for all you to know.
We just divide and conquer, and we can break it down really fast.
On the road, we drove by the financial services firm where she worked for 15 years before her arrest.
Little did I know, I'd reconnect with someone I had dated nearly 20 years earlier, and then he would be tragically killed, murdered, and I've been framed for it.
We appreciate you guys coming here. Reed's LA-based lawyer, Alan Jackson, joined her 3 years to the date of John O'Keefe's death. How much do you think about him?
I think about him in terms of his final days, his final weeks. I mean, we have his cell phone, which a cell phone to anyone is like a diary. The time that I spent with John, 2 years, it's now been 3 since he's gone. And I have very mixed feelings, you know, when I look back on John, because I see a lot of poor decisions that were all precursors to his death.
Poor decisions by whom?
By both of us. Just drinking, being around the wrong people is chief among them.
So talking about the poor decisions that they've made together, which led to his death. Now, it seems that she's only talking about that night, the night of his death, when they were drinking, they were hanging around the wrong people. And we know what she's talking about, the wrong people. So that seems to be in answering the question about what that night specifically, the poor decisions that they made leading up to this. Now, what about the poor decisions they made before that? You know, we do know that the relationship wasn't in the greatest place even before that. And she didn't really get into that. And that's also an interesting area to talk about. Like, what was the relationship going through before that night? You know, it seemed we saw the text messages. It seems that you were in some sort of fight. You know, okay, couples get into fights. Was it one of those? How often did you have fights like that? You know, where was the relationship exactly holding before that night? You know, they didn't really get into that, at least in this interview. So just wanted to point that out.
Reed admits drinking in the hours before O'Keefe was found unresponsive outside 34 Fairview Road in Canton.
She just repeated the phrase over and over again, I hit him, I hit him.
Multiple first responders testified that Reed initially said herself she hit O'Keefe with her SUV. Reed says she only questioned if she could have hit him.
Yeah, I went through every possibility. He was near the road and he was dying. And I didn't think he was purposely put in that place. It did not cross my mind for several days that they did this to John.
So, and we spoke about the difference between, when she's saying I hit him, and is it just her questioning whether she actually hit him? And the fact that she may have said that as a statement, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. Even if she said it as a statement, we explained that a number of times when a person is in a panic mode, when a person's completely hysterical, they could blame themselves, even though they don't really know. They just say things, even though it's not really, they're still not sure what happened, but they will just automatically blame themselves. Now, we didn't see an expert talk about that. Maybe that's something that we'll see in the next trial. But I think it's worthwhile maybe to explore on the defense to see, maybe you have an expert who can explain to a jury that when someone is going through this, trauma, and they're hysterical, and even if they say a direct statement, I hit him, and they take the blame, it doesn't really mean that they're sharing with us what actually happened. They're just thinking that they must have, or they're just blurting things out that don't really make any sense because they can't figure out how else it happened. But not that they are actually recounting the truthful, rational thing of what actually happened in this case.
That John was treated like a piece of garbage.
When Reed says they, she is referring to people who were gathered inside 34 Fairview. If John was beaten up and attacked in that house, who did it?
We don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know. And it's not for us to know.
I mean, that was an interesting look right there. You know, Alan Jackson right away said, we don't know. She repeated that, we don't know. They had that look of we don't know. It was an interesting moment. I think that they may have ideas about who they think did this. And they probably discussed that because it's too much speculation about who exactly did it, make sure you don't say it. Don't just say who what your feeling is. It doesn't really matter so much for the purposes of this trial or for the interview to say, I think it was Brian Higgins. I think it was Brian Albert, or whatever, whatever they personally may believe about this, or maybe what Karen Reed believes about itself. It seems that they had a conversation before to say very clearly, look, we're going to stick with what makes the most sense, is that we don't really know what happened in that house. Once he got into the house, we don't know who eventually pushed him down the stairs or if there was any sort of altercation there. We don't know. So therefore, we're going to stick with that, even though it seems they have some sort of idea. That's why it seemed like they shared that moment right then.
Oh, somebody other than Karen is responsible for that, for the killing of John.
What is the...
And you see how Alan Jackson is saying somebody other than Karen. And that's the whole point. The point here, really, that Alan Jackson and Karen we want to stress is that, look, I don't know who did this, but it wasn't me. It may have been one of the 7, 8 people that were in that house. It doesn't matter to us. The point is, and that's all we have to show in this case, is that you can't prove that it was Karen. That's all that matters, really.
One thing in this case you believe proves your innocence.
Now, I thought that this question was very interesting. What is the one thing that proves you're innocent in this case? And she's going to mention something that's very strong. It's a strong piece of evidence. I think I would have dealt with this a little bit differently, but I'm going to let you listen to her answer first, and then I'm going to tell you what maybe I would have said or maybe coached her in case I saw it. Maybe I would have seen this question coming, what I think maybe a little bit of a better answer would have been.
John's body, no bruise, 6,000-pound, full-size SUV, not a bruise on his body, not a fracture below his head.
If you were...
So that is obviously a very strong point of evidence that's in her favor. And we spoke about this a number of times. That was really what Dr. Rentschler testified to, and some of the other medical experts, medical examiners, that said that there was no fractures below the neck down. There was no bruising below the neck down. And, Dr. Rentschler said it doesn't make sense that the car hit John O'Keefe because then there would have been a lot more bruising. This is I acknowledge, and I've said myself, that is a very, very strong point of evidence, which shows that she didn't do it. She didn't back the car into him. Now, again, also a very strong point of evidence is that the damage to the vehicle doesn't add up to hitting John O'Keefe either. That was Dr. Wolf's testimony, and that was also largely uncontradicted, unless you want to consider Trooper Paul contradicting that, which we've already explained ad nauseum about that. So there's a lot of different points. Now, you also have Dr. Marie Russell about that the arm, that the abrasions of the arm look like a dog attack. Now, she doesn't talk about that too much. And I think that, yes, I understand the way that he asked the question. I think he's doing a good job, Ted Daniels, asking that question as a journalist. I think the appropriate answer here, I think the better answer here, is that there is so many things that show that I'm innocent. You're asking me for one thing? There's so many things. What shows that I'm not innocent? There's so many, every way you look at this case, this shows that I'm innocent. And we can go through and talk about every single detail of this case. But that was a little bit of a tricky question. Again, it's Ted Daniels. He's a good journalist, and he's doing a good job asking that type of question. But she kind of took the bait. And I think it would have been a better answer to say, what one thing? There's about 20 things that show that I'm innocent. There's 20 strong pieces of evidence that show that I'm innocent. You want me to go through each one? Yeah, that's one of them, sure. But I think that would have been maybe a little bit of a better answer. All right, let's move on.
Framed, who's calling the shots?
I don't know the interconnections, the interpersonal relationships among these people. I have a strong personal opinion that what has motivated this persecution of me is power.
I'm declaring a mistrial in this case.
Reed says her initial thought of going through a second trial was a gut punch, but now she sees it as more time to prepare. She's talking now will She talked then.
I'm not afraid of taking the stand, and I'm clearly not afraid of speaking. But they're playing hardball, so we'll weigh the pros and cons, and we'll make another second game time decision.
Who would you rather face? Is it Adam Lally, who we saw in the first trial, or is it Hank Brennan?
I don't care who I face. I have the truth. I have the best attorneys. Do your worst.
What?
And that's exactly the right answer. Okay, that's exactly the right answer. I don't care who the prosecutor is. You can have the greatest prosecutor in America. I don't really care, because the truth is the truth, and I didn't do anything wrong. Okay, that is the absolute correct answer. Okay, that's the answer that you'd obviously tell your client to give. Nevertheless, everybody knows, I think, that you'd much prefer Adam Lally to cross-examine her as opposed to Hank Brennan. Okay, I think from what we've seen so far, Hank Brennan is very sharp. He is, in a way, stronger to cross-examine Karen Read than Adam Lally would be. Again, I'm not taking anything away from Adam Lally. I think he's a good attorney. I think he did a good job. But what we saw from Hank Brennan is that he's very fierce, and he will do his best, and he's very good. He's sly. He's sneaky. He's a great attorney. He's a good trial attorney. So I think realistically, of course, the attorneys who are watching say, yeah, obviously we'd want Adam Lally, but that's not the answer you're going to give, because the bottom line is that, look, it's the truth. Now, I know as an attorney, even when you have a truthful witness, if you're a good attorney, you'll be able to make that witness look not so truthful. You'll be able to punch some holes in that witness if you're good at cross-examination. So really the answer is, of course, we want Adam Lally, but really they're never going to answer that. That's not the right answer to give. And her answer is exactly perfect, exactly the answer that you have to say, that you don't really care.
One of the possible outcomes here could be a conviction. That could be prison time. How much have you thought about that?
I think about it every day, about prison time, and it doesn't frighten me the way it did 3 years ago.
Reed sold her Mansfield home in November to help pay her estimated $5 million in legal fees. She lives.
And by the way, that was $5 million like months ago, right? I mean, like that's what they estimated to be months ago. So at this point, and after the second trial, you're looking at a lot more than $5 million. So just because she sold her house for whatever it was, what, $710,000, that's just a drop in the bucket for what these legal fees are actually going to be.
With her parents, who are a part of an inner circle that numbers about 10. Supporters have donated $750,000 to her defense fund.
And that's amazing, that she got supporters to donate, that type of money. But again, you're talking about these extremely high profile attorneys, and you're talking about $5 million. I mean, even together that you're looking at 750 and that 710, whatever it was for her house. Okay, you're talking about 1.5 million. There's still a lot more to go that she has to pay in legal fees. And maybe Robert Alessi is doing this pro bono, but Alan Jackson's not cheap. David Giannetti's probably not cheap. And Alan Jackson's got Elizabeth Little with him. So that, she's probably not cheap, her billable hours. So, you're talking a lot of legal fees. I mean, it makes sense, the amount that this trial has been going on for. So she's still going to have a lot of money to make up.
And she says people routinely pick up her meals.
I don't know the last time I've done anything but tip a waiter. And that generosity, that's all helping fuel this. It helps me spiritually. And it helps me financially.
She's well aware not everyone has her back. John O'Keefe's family is convinced she's a killer and have filed a wrongful death lawsuit against her. Do you feel the presence of the O'Keefe family behind you in court?
I honestly, I almost look through them. Paul sitting there doesn't impact me. It doesn't bother me. That's John's brother. They've attempted to send me messages,
and some people will point to, oh, look how nasty she's being. She looks right through them. And this is the victim's family, after all. How can you be so cruel and so nasty and say things about them like that? Well, the answer to that is that they completely agree with the prosecution in this case. They're completely on their side. They completely think 100% that she did it. Now, if you're an innocent person and somebody is dead sold on you sitting in prison for the rest of your life for a crime that you didn't commit, you're probably not going to have such cozy feelings for them and such warm feelings for them. Right. So, no, I don't think it's I don't think it's nasty. I think that that's normal when you have adversaries like this. Now they've sued her in civil case. So in case they can't get a jury to convict her beyond a reasonable doubt, they want to force her to have to pay who knows how much money if there's a verdict in that case to the O'Keefe family. So how can you be so mean and nasty to the O'Keefe family because they're the ones that are the victims here? Yeah, but you're suing me for millions of dollars, and you're trying to throw me in prison for the rest of my life for what she believes is a crime that she did not commit. So you're not going to have any love lost there. Now, like I've said a number of times, and when I was reacting to the O'Keefe interview, Paul O'Keefe's interview, is that I feel bad for the family. I feel terrible for the O'Keefe family. I think that the case has shown that she is not guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, and therefore she should walk. Definitely after the last trial. Again, I haven't seen the next trial, but from what I've seen from the first trial, they did not prove the case. The Commonwealth did not prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. So do I feel terrible for the O'Keefe family? Of course, I feel terrible for the O'Keefe family. They lost John O'Keefe. But throwing Karen Read in prison is not going to help anybody, definitely if she's not proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. So, there's no winners here. But I think to try to twist what she's saying here, that she looks through them and that she can't sit there and be intimidated by the O'Keefe family, I don't think that's nasty. It's that these are people that are trying to throw her away for what she believes is that she never did anything wrong, and they're trying to sue her for millions of dollars. So they're trying to bankrupt her and throw her in prison. So, I mean, come on.
As soon as I see the name comes up, I just delete it.
Online, Read is bombarded by love and hate. Yes, she pays attention. This case has become your identity. Is that for the rest of your life? Or will one day you just want to put it all behind you?
I don't think I can, even if I wanted to. And I'm okay with that.
We asked the North.
Yeah, so, this case has become her identity because she's been living and breathing it for the past who knows how long. That's why it's become her identity. If she does get an acquittal at the next trial, then she's probably going to try to move on beyond the trial. Now, of course, something like this is not just something you're going to forget about the next Monday that this is over. Of course, it's going to stick with you for the rest of your life. But hopefully, if she's acquitted, she'll be able to move on with her life and get beyond it. So it's a very interesting interview. The rest of it is just Ted Daniels talking a little bit more. So there's no more statements, I believe, from her. But that's this 6-minute segment. And again, there's going to be more. It seems that's going to be coming out. And Hank Brennan is going to get actually the unedited version, most likely, because he filed that motion. And we see that Judge Cannoni already granted that. So with Gretchen Voss. So he's most likely going to be able to get all of these unredacted and unedited versions of any sort of statements that Karen Read made. So I think an interesting video interview. I don't think she did any harm, at least from this 6-minute segment. I don't think there's any harm in that. Of course, Hank Brennan's a good attorney, so he's going to try to use everything to his advantage and try to bring some other statements that she made and try to show that she's contradicting herself. But from the 6 minutes that I saw, nothing really too crazy that they can really use too much against her. So that is going to be it for now. If you haven't yet, please subscribe, like, and we will see you next time.